In this mini lesson, I am going to walk us through the skill of close reading. Close reading in social studies is using our focus and attention to identify smaller details within a source, so an article, a historical document, maybe even a painting or a picture of some kind, to identify what the argument or claim of that source is. So close reading does take our attention, and it does take a couple of passovers of the document, which means we can't just read it once and then be done with close reading, unfortunately. It is really helpful when we are close reading actual documents or articles like the one we've been using this week, if we use those annotation tools, so marking up our document to collect our information and keep it organized. When we are close reading, we are asking ourselves questions like, what is the author trying to prove? What evidence does the author use to prove that point? What language does the author use to persuade their readers? And how does the document's language show what the author believes? Now, if you remember our earlier lessons where we were looking at this WTHR article, you might remember that we decided it was meant to be informational. So you might be asking, how can we do close reading about a document or article that is meant to be informational? And the short answer is that there is a claim or an argument made in everything that we view, even if the author or creator is not intending to have an argument in it. So the way that that works in this particular article that we have used about the Indianapolis Indians baseball team is that Emily Longnecker herself might not agree with changing the Indianapolis Indians name. However, the information that she shares within the document is trying to prove a point on its own. So Emily Longnecker might not want to change your mind, but the information within the document does present an argument that we can close read. So the first thing that I did while looking at this article was try and identify what the argument or the claim was. So what is trying to be proven? And I identified that with the information that's highlighted in yellow. So Native Americans plan to ask Indianapolis Indians to change their name. And then that was also echoed down below in those first few sentences. What's in a name? The American Indian Center of Indiana would answer a lot. And then I also highlighted in yellow the executive director, Carolina Castorino Santana's name, because really this argument is being made by her and her organization. The next question I had to ask myself was what evidence is being used either by the author or in this case Carolina to prove their point. And so I highlighted that in pink. Some of the big pieces of evidence I pulled were that Carolina is a Native American woman who is a member of the Lipan Apache tribe. I also highlighted that this is not a new fight for change. This is something that started all the way back in 1995, and while some progress has been made, it's still not quite where the American Indian Center would like it to be. I also highlighted the information that the NFL team, the Washington football team now, they were formerly the Redskins, agreed to change their name. So if a big team within the NFL can change their name, it would make sense that a AAA baseball team would do the same. And then I also highlighted the part of the sentence down below that says all of the imagery that is tied to that, so meaning the mascot, that reduces Native American people to an image from the past. Like it really takes away that human part of who Native Americans are as individuals. And Carolina says that that is super hurtful and not acceptable. The next thing I want to look at are the language or writing skills used to persuade the audience. And I highlighted those in blue. So when I'm looking for writing skills or language that's being used to change someone's mind, I am thinking very specifically not just about the literal word, but what the words or phrases make people feel. So for example, I really thought it was important to point out that Carolina uses emotion to try and help people be sympathetic or empathetic. So she talks about things like memories and preserving memories. She also talks about how the thing that makes us proud shouldn't be something that also hurts another group of people. So those emotional appeals support her argument. I also noted that she doesn't just use emotion. She also tries to explain things in depth. So she walks people through kind of the story, so some of that stuff that I've already highlighted in pink. And she uses statistics, or not statistics, but facts like, hey, this big NFL team changed their name, you should do the same. And then the last thing that I identified that she did that was persuasive was she used a counter argument. So she admits that there are things that are more important to worry about when we think about racism and racial justice. However, she adds on that without making these smaller changes, it's going to be really hard to make people care about the bigger things, like people that are being murdered or abducted, or treaty rights, land rights, and water rights. So all things that really impact Native Americans. So now that I have all of my information collected, I can start to describe how the document's language or writing choices impact the argument. So if I were to do that, a sample answer might be that Carolina's use of emotion helps readers or audience members who might not agree with her understand where she's coming from. It might make them sympathetic to her. I would also say that her use of facts and her pointing out that other bigger teams have already made this change are also really persuasive, and show that she is frustrated and just really wants to see this change come through for our smaller community team. And then lastly, I would also bring in the idea that Carolina's use of a counter argument really shows that she has a good understanding of some of those barriers that might stop people from agreeing with her, and she wants to help them overcome that so that they can all kind of be on the same side of the argument and understand each other better. So that was a very quick walkthrough of how to do a close reading with an article.